The facility where she's being held, run by Geo Group, a multi-billion-dollar private prison company, has been the subject of dozens of complaints from current and former female detainees who have claimed they have been denied basic medical treatment, hygiene supplies, and edible food. Over the past few years, one of the signature funds at Blackstone, which is a private equity investment group, this is from a piece by Natasha Sarin at a guest essay over at the New York Times. Over the past few years, one of the signature funds has delivered on average 10% annual returns for its investors. That's really good, right? I mean, you know, if you've got a 401k or something, 10% a year, wow. How do you do that? Well, this is one of these funds that's called, you know, it's a private equity fund. And they're associated with, and she goes on to write, and yet in the first quarter of this year, nearly 8% of the fund's investors declared that they wanted out. Uh-oh, as Scooby-Doo would say. You know, this is not a good thing, right? This is called a bank run. Now, 8% isn't yet a bank run, right? But it's a kind of an early warning sign. You will recall that back in the late 1990s, my recollection is that the year was 98 or 99, when Republican Senator Phil Gramm of Texas stood on the floor of the Senate and said, this Glass-Steagall thing that was passed in 1933 that says that banks can't, banks that, you know, have mortgages and checkbook accounts and things like that can't also gamble in the stock market and gamble with their money, is out of date because it's worked so well. We haven't had a bank fail since the Republican Great Depression, so let's just do away with it. And so, you know, in their infinite wisdom, the Republicans in Congress, and a large handful of Democrats, by the way, went along with that, and they blew up Glass-Steagall. Bill Clinton signed the legislation. And a decade later, in 2008, as George Bush was president, the banks for that decade had been packaging crummy mortgages, bad mortgages that had been given to people that they generally knew couldn't actually pay them. They weren't expecting the repayment because they were reselling these mortgages, knowing that the people who bought the mortgages in these bundles would end up being stuck with the bad debt, right? I mean, it was a scam from the get-go by the banksters. There was a similar one with the S&Ls, by the way. During the Reagan administration, Reagan deregulated the S&Ls. And then 2, 3, 4 years later, the same thing happened in the S&L, the savings and loan industry. Reagan hired this guy, Seidman, out of Grand Rapids. I used to play his, we had a whole collection of clips by Mr. Seidman. I forget his first name. Bill, I think. Yeah, William Seidman. Where he described what he did and how he did it. It was pretty brilliant. But they put 800 bankers. They indicted over 1,000 bankers, and they put over 800 people in jail, in prison for that, back in the 80s. That was during the Reagan administration. Well, when Bush and his people and the banksters crashed the economy in 2008, and Henry Paulson was out there trembling with his hands going, "Please, Congress, give me $1 trillion right now." They didn't put any bankers in jail. In fact, the banksters walked away with billion-dollar bonuses, many of them, even as their institutions failed. The only major institution that failed was Lehman Brothers. And they walked away from that well. Nobody went to jail. Nobody was prosecuted. And so, of course, they're going to try it again, right? They just have to figure out what's the loophole we can exploit this time. Because they closed that, you know, you can't tranche out, or whatever they called it, you know, bad mortgages, so we got to come up with a new scam. Well, the new scam appears to be what's called private credit. And these private credit institutions, private credit funds is what they're called, they behave like banks. If you're a company, they only loan to businesses. If you're a company, you go to them and you say, you know, we want to borrow $100 million to expand our business. And they say, okay, we'll do that. And the bank is going to charge you 5%, but we'll do it for 4%. We'll give you better terms in the bank. Or if you're a company and you want to expand or you want to grow or you're in trouble or whatever, and your credit is so bad that a bank won't loan you money, these private credit funds will loan you money, but at a higher interest. Oh, yeah, we'll give, but at 6% or 7%. But yeah, we'll give you the money, no problem. The private credit funds are not guaranteed by the federal government, and they are overseen by an office called the Office of Financial Research, which tracks them. It doesn't regulate them. They're not regulated outside of the fraud laws. But the Office of Financial Research tracks them, or at least it did until Trump gutted it last year. Are you starting to hear an echo here? 2008, 1986, all over again, or whatever the year was in the 80s. Well, I mentioned that Blackstone, 8% of their funds investors want their money back. Apollo, 11.2% want their money back. Ares, 11.6% want their money back. Blue Owl, 21.9% of their investors want their money back. Nobody's exactly sure why all these these investors that were making like these 10% returns, right? They're like, something's going on. Why are these investors pulling their money out? Is it because the economy's going south and they're just trying to prepare for that? Is it because they think the private credit funds are not going to be able to repay them someday? What's going on? Nobody knows. But this is, because they're less heavily regulated, they can offer better terms, et cetera, et cetera. So here's this article in the New York Times yesterday and today, by Natasha Sarin, who is a professor at the Yale Law School and president of the Budget Lab at Yale. And the headline is, "This is starting to look like a slow-motion bank run." If these private credit funds go down, it won't bring down our banking system the way it did when banks went down, and it won't bring down the S&L system like it did when the S&Ls went down, but it could do amazing, enormous damage to our economy more broadly, because it could just bring down Wall Street. So keep an eye on this. These are called private credit funds, and it looks like this might be the next place where some real serious problems are going to happen. Meanwhile, U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Matthew Blank, 23, met the love of his life, Annie Ramos, who's 22, and they got married, and she came to the Army base, Fort Polk, where he's stationed, to apply for spouse benefits, military spouse benefits. And when she arrived, ICE was waiting for her. They put her in handcuffs. This is a woman who she works as a Sunday school teacher and is months away from finishing a bachelor's degree in biochemistry. She has no criminal record. She was brought to the United States by her parents when she was 22 months old. She only speaks English. This is the only country she's ever known. She applied for DACA back in 2020. 6 years ago, she applied for DACA, but the Trump administration had put a freeze on new DACA applications, so her application's in limbo. She had, years ago, she and her husband, Blank, Mr. Staff Sergeant Blank, had hired a lawyer to start this process of applying, because once you marry a U.S. citizen, you become eligible for a green card, and then 3 years after that, you become eligible for citizenship. I saw this in my own family. A relative of mine married a woman from outside the country, and a couple of years later, she became a U.S. citizen. We all celebrated. It was a wonderful thing. So here this young woman, this new bride, comes to the Army base with her husband to apply for spouse benefits because he's about to be deployed. They're going to send him off to Iran or something. And ICE is there to drag her off. So Staff Sergeant Blank said, "We were doing everything the right way," as she was led away in shackles. She is now in the privately owned South Louisiana Immigration and Customs Enforcement Processing Center in Basile, Louisiana. Blank said, the sergeant said she was going to move in with me after the Easter weekend. Instead, she got ripped away from me. The Department of Homeland Security, now run by Markwayne Mullen, issued a statement that she was, quote, arrested after she attempted to enter a military base. As if that was the crime she committed and therefore she was arrested. Her husband is an Army sergeant who is about to be deployed and has housing on the base, and she was going to move in with him because they just got married that week. Aaron Richland-Melnick, a senior fellow at the American Immigration Council, said in every previous administration, including Trump's first, this woman would not have been a priority for enforcement. Only 21% of Americans support deporting undocumented people brought here as kids, which she was. And only 16% support deporting those who are married to U.S. citizens, which she is. This is sick. And the facility where she's being held, it's run by Geo Group, a multi-billion-dollar private prison company. And here I'll just read to you from Stephen Prager's piece published at News, Rights, and Justice over at commondreams.org. The facility where she's being held, run by Geo Group, a multi-billion-dollar private prison company, has been the subject of dozens of complaints from current and former female detainees who have claimed they have been denied basic medical treatment, hygiene supplies, and edible food. Others say they have faced sexual abuse and harassment and were subject to forced labor. In December, a former guard pleaded guilty in federal court to sexually abusing a Nicaraguan detainee in mid-2025 last year. So she's now in a facility where they rape women. They feed them crap food. The company's making billions, of course. It's a private prison company. Yes, give us money. We will give you blood. This is so sick and twisted. This is Trump's America. We've got to change this. There's a quiet health problem that damages your body every single day, and most people have no idea it's happening. High blood pressure. It's the #1 risk factor for mortality. Half of all adults, 1 in 2 people have it. 120 Life is a once-a-day functional drink made with ingredients that help support healthy blood pressure. It's not a pill, not a stimulant, not some trendy wellness gimmick, and it tastes great. It's refreshing, and it's made from a blend of superfruit juices. I have high blood pressure, and I love this drink. I literally use it every day. Over 1,000 health professionals have supported or endorsed its use. It's increasingly becoming a go-to natural tool in clinical settings, not just in wellness circles. Go to 120life.com. That's 120life.com, and use my code TOM, T-H-O-M, for 20% off. Try it risk-free for 2 weeks. If your blood pressure doesn't come down, you get a full refund. Just go to 120life, 120life.com, and use the code TOM, T-H-O-M, to save that 20%. And don't wait until next month. You got nothing to lose except your high blood pressure numbers. Go to 120life.com and use my code TOM for 20% off. Use that code TOM today. These statements have not been approved by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.